The beacon was the size of a coffee can. That is the detail I keep returning to years later when someone asks me how it started. Not the 61,000 names. Not the 9 days. Not the 11 habitats going dark one by one like blown fuses on a circuit board too far from anyone to notice. The beacon. 12 centimeters of hardened casing, a compressed archive, and a transmitter built to frequency hop through anything, because the colonial engineers who installed it had not trusted the galaxy to stay polite. It reached us 3 months after the last habitat went silent. I was the one who opened the file. My name is Cale Adric. My title at the time was Senior Signal Analyst, Colonial Intelligence Division, Bureau of Frontier Affairs, which is a long way of saying I sat in a room with no windows and read the things nobody else wanted to read. Distress logs, degraded transmissions, the bureaucratic residue of places too small and too far to matter to anyone until they stopped transmitting entirely. The Vaethri Combine had calculated precisely on that. They were not soldiers. I want to be clear about what they were, because the word soldier implies a war, and what the Vaethri ran was not a war. It was a service, a contracted, commercially structured, logistically optimized service. Their clients, we identified 9 of them in the archive, had purchased what the Vaethri called a quieting protocol. The clients would designate a zone of human settlement. The Vaethri would deploy their suppression lattice, a network of relay scrambling nodes seeded through a system that jammed every standard colonial distress frequency, every rescue beacon band, every subspace relay channel. The zone went dark. Then the culling teams went in. Then the zone stayed dark long enough for the clients to file whatever paperwork their respective governments required to reclassify the territory as uninhabited. 11 habitats, 9 days, 61,000 people. Price per head, according to the Combine's internal billing records, which were in the archive. I read the archive for 16 hours without stopping. I am not going to tell you it did not affect me, because that would be a lie, and I am not in the habit of lying about the ones we failed to reach in time. I will tell you that by the end of the 16th hour, I had stopped feeling the way a person feels and started feeling the way a machine feels, which is to say, I started building the target package. That is what I do. That is what I am for. The Vaethri Combine operated 31 relay nodes across their network, 7 deep stations, for primary suppression array manufacturing facilities, 1 headquarters installation on a rock called Vaethri Prime, which was less a planet than an asteroid with ambitions. I mapped every installation from the archive's embedded signal logs, cross-referenced against publicly available shipping manifests. The Combine also ran legitimate freight, which is how they stayed funded and registered, and had the complete target list compiled inside 22 hours of receiving the beacon. I sent it up the chain with a cover memo that said, in its entirety, asterisk attached, the target package. Recommend immediate action. The billing records are on page 47, asterisk. The memo came back in 6 hours with 2 words, warrant approved. The Solemn Warrant was 740 warships. I did not name the fleet. The naming conventions for colonial response forces are handled by a separate department. But when I read the designation for the first time, I thought it was the right word. A warrant is a document of authority. It means the action it authorizes is not rage, not vengeance, not grief. It means someone examined the evidence, found it sufficient, and signed their name to the consequence. I had examined the evidence. I had found it sufficient. I was aboard the flagship, the Cashin Ridge, not because I was military, but because the operation required the target package to be maintained and updated in real time as each installation was confirmed destroyed. My station was a small desk in the signals room, 3 decks below the bridge. I had a terminal, a headset, and a cup of cold coffee that I did not drink. The Solemn Warrant dropped out of transit at 0400 fleet time, 11 light minutes from the outermost Vaethri relay node. Node 31. Designation, Vaethri Outer Relay, Commercial Freight Band, Class C installation. 43 Vaethri operators. 1 suppression array maintenance bay. 2 freight docking ports. They had time to transmit 1 burst before our ships were in range. The burst said, in loose translation, unidentified fleet. This is a commercial installation. You are in violation of Treaty Compact Article. The Cashin Ridge S communications officer cut the burst. Then she opened a different channel, a broadcast channel. All frequencies, all bands, maximum power directed outward, not at the Viethri node, but the rest of the galaxy. At every ship in range, every station, every listening post that happened to be oriented in our direction. She began reading names. This was my design, not the Admiral's. The Admiral had approved it, but it had come from me, from 16 hours of sitting with an archive of 61,000 people who had died in complete silence because someone had paid to make sure no one heard them. The Viethri Combine had sold silence. I was going to make sure silence was the one thing we did not give them. The names were alphabetized. There were 61,000 of them. We had recovered first names, surnames, habitat designations, and ages for 58,412. The remaining 2,588 were listed as name unknown, habitat designation, estimated age range, because the Viethri culling teams had hit the administrative offices first, and some of the records had not survived. The communications officer read them in a flat, clear voice. She did not editorialize. She did not pause for effect. She simply read, Node 31 fell at the 847th name. We moved to Node 30. The Solemn Warrant was not a blunt instrument. It was a sequence. Each installation taken in order, systematically, each one confirmed destroyed before we moved to the next. No installation was left intact. No suppression array was disabled and abandoned. Disabled arrays can be repaired. Destroyed arrays cannot. We took each facility apart down to its structural frame and left nothing behind that could be used to go dark on someone again. The 9 Viethri client entities whose names appeared in the billing records on page 47 received, simultaneously, a copy of the full archive and a one-sentence communication from the Bureau of Colonial Affairs. Your account with the Viethri Combine has been credited in full. We did not go after the clients. That calculation was made above my level, and I agreed with it. The Combine had sold them a service. Without the Combine, the service could not be rendered. Cut the capability at the root. The clients would spend the next several generations wondering whether someone would come for them anyway. Let them wonder. The communications officer was on her 14th hour of reading names when we reached Viethri Prime. The Combine's leadership had attempted to evacuate. We had anticipated this, and the transit interdiction ships were already in position. 3 vessels intercepted. 14 senior Viethri administrators were taken alive, transported to the Cashin Ridge, and placed in custody for transfer to Colonial Court. I had no part in what happened to them after that. What I know is this. When the last installation, Viethri Prime's primary headquarters, a pressurized dome on the asteroid's sunward face, was confirmed destroyed, the communications officer closed the broadcast channel. She had been reading for 19 hours and 40 minutes. She had reached name 58,907. She looked at me across the signals room. I gave her the updated file, the names we had not yet reached. She opened the channel again and read the rest. When she finished, all 61,000 names, plus the 2,588 unknowns, she closed the channel, removed her headset, and sat on the console with the care of someone setting down something that deserved care. No one in the signals room spoke. I saved the final broadcast log to the archive. The complete record, the beacon, the target package, the operation, and 19 hours and 40 minutes of names read on every open frequency in range. I flagged it for distribution to every colonial relay still operating in the frontier sectors, the ones that had survived because the Viethri had not gotten to them yet. The filing tag I used was the same one I use for every closed operation. Asterisk case resolved. Record retained. File complete. Asterisk. I do not know how many people heard the names that day. Ships in transit, stations with their receivers open, freight haulers drifting through on their normal routes. I do not know how many of those people stopped what they were doing to listen to an unknown communications officer read 61,000 names in a flat, clear voice. What I know is that the Viethri Combine had sold silence. What I know is that silence was the one thing we did not give them back.